The apartment building I live in isn't old enough to be charming, but it's old enough to have problems. Pipes that groan at 3 a.m., heat that kicks on whenever it feels like it, a laundry room that smells vaguely like somebody spilled soup in 1998 and nobody cleaned it up. The rent is cheap though. That's what keeps me here. Well, that and the fact that I can't really afford to move again. I've got one neighbor on my floor that I actually talk to, Mrs. Eleanor Marsh. 70-something. Quiet, polite. Always dresses like she's headed to church, even when she's checking her mail. The kind of elderly woman you'd trust to water your plants when you're out of town. She also has a habit of knocking on my door with letters her late husband supposedly sends her. And the weird part? He's been dead since 2003. The first time she asked me to read one aloud, I thought she was confused or lonely, or maybe she just needed company. The envelope she held was old and soft at the edges, the paper almost sun-faded, but the ink inside, it looked brand new. And the contents? That was the moment something in my life shifted. Just a few degrees at first, but enough to start feeling wrong. The letter described my exact routine from the night before, down to the time I came home, down to the place I tossed my keys, down to how long I stood in my kitchen deciding whether to cook or just give up and eat toast. Every detail correct. Too correct. I tried to play it off, read it in a neutral voice, handed back politely. But something in her expression worried me. Not fear, not confusion, but a kind of hopeful calm, like she believed her husband was still just writing to her from somewhere. I told myself it was a fluke, until more letters came. Mrs. Marsh knocked again 3 days later. I opened the door to find her holding another envelope. This one, pale blue, with a postmark so faded I couldn't tell what year it was supposed to be from. She asked me to read it, so I did. It described what I ate for breakfast, what shirt I wore to work, the exact moment I forgot my wallet and had to run back upstairs. You ever have someone describe your entire day to you in detail you don't even remember doing? It feels like your life isn't yours anymore, like someone's been living in your shadow. Every letter got more specific. The next one mentioned how I talk to myself under my breath when I'm stressed. Another described the moment I laughed alone at a stupid video at 1 a.m. One letter even mentioned I check my apartment lock 3 times before leaving. Things no one should know. Things I barely notice myself. And every time I read them aloud, Mrs. Marsh would smile gently, as if the words from beyond made something in her chest feel whole again. She'd thank me, fold the letter carefully, and place it in a little box she kept beside her recliner. A box filled with dozens, maybe hundreds of envelopes, all written in the same precise handwriting that did not belong to anyone alive. But yesterday changed everything. She knocked on my door earlier than usual, maybe a little after 6. Her hands trembled when she handed me an envelope. Not one of the old, faded ones this time. This one looked almost new, cleaner, like it hadn't aged at all. And my name was written on it, not hers. Would you read this one? She asked. I don't understand it. I opened it. The first line made my mouth go dry. He'll fall asleep uneasily tonight. I swallowed hard and kept reading. By 3:27 a.m., he will turn onto his left side. Dreams we come slowly. And when they do, my heartbeat climbed into my throat. He will see the room exactly as it is, except he won't be alone. I stopped. Mrs. Marsh looked at me with wide, watery eyes. "What does it say?" she whispered. I didn't want to tell her. I really didn't. But I read the next part. "He will think it's a dream, but it won't be. They never are. Tell him not to open his eyes when he feels the bed shift." My hands went numb. The ink looked like it had been written minutes ago. And the final line? "If he opens his eyes, he will finally see who has been writing to you both." I folded the letter slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. Mrs. Marsh took a single step back, shaking her head. "That's not my husband's handwriting," she whispered. This one feels wrong." Before I could say anything, she shut her door, locked it, turned off her living room light. I stood there in the hallway, with the letter burning cold in my hand. Last night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I stayed on my couch with the TV on low, trying to convince myself the whole thing was some elaborate prank. My friends? The building manager? Someone bored enough to mess with me. But around 3 a.m., I must have drifted. I wasn't fully asleep, just barely under, floating somewhere between dream and waking. That's when I heard the creak from my bedroom. One slow shift of weight, then another, closer, deliberate. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Something sat on the bed. The springs dipped. The air pressure in the room changed. A warm exhale brushed the back of my neck, even though I wasn't in the room. I remembered the letter. "Don't open your eyes." I stayed frozen until sunrise. When I finally checked the bedroom, the sheets were wrinkled, indented. The kind of indentation a body makes when it sits too long. As if someone had waited there patiently, watching. 10 minutes ago, someone slid an envelope under my door. No knock. No footsteps. Soft, deliberate, like they knew I was listening. This one wasn't addressed to me. It wasn't addressed to Mrs. Marsh either. It just had 3 words written in that same perfect handwriting. "You're next, tonight." I didn't leave my apartment that entire morning. I just sat in the living room, staring at the newest envelope. That short warning repeating in my mind like a heartbeat. "You're next, tonight." I kept trying to explain it away. Prank, break-in, hallucination, exhaustion, anything rational. But none of those theories survived more than a few seconds. Because if someone had actually come in here last night, quietly enough to sit on my bed without waking me, I'd be dead already, or worse. And if nobody had come in, then whatever was here didn't need the door. I didn't want to think about which possibility scared me more. By noon, I decided I couldn't stay inside any longer. The walls felt closer by the minute, like the building itself was tightening around me. So I went downstairs, grabbed a coffee from the corner cafe, and tried to exist like a normal person for a few hours. But normal doesn't come easy when your life suddenly feels observed. Every time someone opened the cafe door, I flinched. Every time my phone buzzed, I checked if someone had texted me in that same perfect handwriting. Every time I glanced at my reflection in the cafe window, I half expected to see a face behind me. When I finally walked back to the building, Mrs. Marsh was sitting in the lobby. She looked smaller in the overstuffed armchair, like someone had taken the air out of her. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, knuckles white. She looked up at me and whispered, "Did you read it?" I nodded. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with guilt. Real, heavy guilt. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have involved you." "Involved me in what?" I asked, kneeling beside her. "Mrs. Marsh, what exactly is going on with these letters? Who's sending them?" She pressed her lips together, thinking hard, as if there were a dozen answers she couldn't use. Finally, she said, "My husband, Edward. He used to write letters constantly. Every day, every occasion, every thought he had. Even after he got sick, he kept writing. It was his way of holding on to things. On to me." She paused. "After he died, I kept waiting for the letters to stop." I felt a chill slither down my back. "They didn't," she said softly. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you—" 17 years, she whispered. "They never stopped. Not once." I stared at her. 17 years, almost 2 decades of letters written in a dead man's hand. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" I asked. She looked at me the way someone looks at a child asking why the sky is blue. Who would believe me? Fair point. Then she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a fragile hush. "For the first 10 years, the letters were about me. My routines, my health, my thoughts, my dreams, things I never said aloud. I thought maybe grief was a doorway. Maybe he was writing from wherever he'd gone. I wanted to believe that. And now?" I pressed. Her expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Now," she whispered, "the letters aren't about me at all. They're about you." I opened my mouth to respond, but she squeezed my hand suddenly, painfully, as her voice cracked. "Please, don't go to sleep tonight." Back upstairs, I locked my door, then deadbolted it, then shoved a chair under the handle. It didn't make me feel better, but at least it made me feel like I'd tried. For the first time in my life, I caught myself wishing I owned a gun, or a dog, or something. Anything that might warn me when something invisible decides to sit on my bed. I turned on every light in the apartment. Then I dragged the blanket and pillow into the bathroom. Why the bathroom? Because it's the only room without a window. One way in, one way out. Easier to defend. I was halfway through building a makeshift nest in the bathtub when I heard something slide under my front door. The sound was unmistakable. The soft, papery whisper of another envelope. I stared at the bathroom door for a solid 10 seconds before forcing myself to move. My chest felt tight, my legs numb. Every instinct screamed, "Don't look, don't look, don't look." But I did. I opened my front door just enough to reach down and pick it up. New envelope, clean, no return address. This time, it wasn't handwritten. It was typed. Black ink. Perfect alignment. Too perfect. On the front was my name in neat print. I opened it with hands that didn't feel like mine. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I read it once, then twice. Then my knees nearly gave out. You move to the bathroom. Smart. But don't bother staying awake. You fall asleep at 2:19 a.m. no matter where you try to hide. My heart stuttered. I kept reading. When you dream tonight, you'll finally understand why I write, and why she was never supposed to read my letters. I blinked at that line. She? Before I could question it further, my phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. No message, just a photo. I opened it. It was a picture of me, asleep. Not last night, not on my couch, not anywhere recent. This was from months ago. I recognized the old bedsheets, taken from the foot of my bed, taken by someone standing there, watching me. The caption under the photo said, "Part 2 is over. Go lie down." I didn't lie down. Not after a text like that. Not after seeing a picture taken from the foot of my bed. One I never knew existed. One no normal person could have taken without waking me. I stayed in the bathroom with the lights on, sitting in the bathtub with my knees pulled up. Phone gripped so hard, my fingers hurt. I kept expecting another envelope to slide under the door. None did, but something worse happened. Around midnight, my bathroom light flickered, not once, not the little dying bulb kind of flicker. It flickered 3 times, evenly spaced, like a signal. I froze. Then, from the living room, I heard it, a soft, deliberate creak of floorboards. Slow footsteps, not heavy, not dragging, measured, as if someone was stepping carefully, gently, knowing exactly where to place their weight to avoid making noise. It didn't work. The apartment settled differently. The air felt warmer near the bottom of the bathroom door. Someone, something, was out there with me. I didn't breathe for a full minute. When I finally forced myself to inhale, I whispered under my breath, "This is not happening. This is not happening." The footsteps stopped. Silence swallowed everything. I waited, fully expecting the door handle to rattle, or the lights to go out again, or for something to appear under the gap in the door. Nothing happened. Then I heard it. Something sliding. Paper. Right inside the apartment. Somewhere near my bedroom. Impossible, I thought. I'm awake. I'm awake. You shouldn't be able to do this when I'm awake. But whatever was sending me these letters wasn't following rules I understood. Around 3:30 a.m., the sound stopped. The air settled. My body felt like it had been wrung out. I didn't sleep, didn't dare. When sunlight finally bled into the cracks of the bathroom door, I pushed it open and stepped carefully into the living room, ready to fight or run, or I don't know, scream. No one was there, but my bedroom door was open. I knew I had closed it. And on my bed, another envelope, not sealed, just resting neatly on the comforter, like someone had placed it with care. I approached slowly, each step feeling like a risk. Inside the envelope was a letter, handwritten again. Same perfect handwriting. "You didn't sleep. That's okay. You'll sleep eventually." I swallowed hard. "But you're asking the wrong question. Not who is writing. Ask why I chose you." My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the page. The next line chilled me deeper than anything yet. "You remind me of him." I stared at that sentence. reading it again and again until the meaning settled in my bones. Him? Her husband? Edward? Why the hell would I remind some entity of a man who'd been dead for nearly 2 decades? I kept reading. He wouldn't listen either. He thought the letters were harmless. He thought I loved him. He didn't understand what it meant that I could see him even when he slept. A chill crept across my spine. Not a ghost, not a stalker, something else. And Mrs. Marsh. Did she know? Did she suspect? I needed answers, so I headed straight to her apartment. Her door was slightly open. That alone made my stomach turn. She was careful, paranoid even, always double locking it, always checking the peephole twice. "Mrs. Marsh?" I called out. No response. I pushed the door wider. Her living room was dim, curtains drawn. The box of letters sat open on her coffee table. Envelopes spilling out like someone had rifled through them in a panic. "Mrs. Marsh?" I stepped inside. "It's me." Still nothing. But then I heard something. A muffled sound, somewhere deeper inside the apartment. Not a cry, not words. Breathing, unsteady, wet, ragged. "Ma'am?" I whispered as I followed the sound. It came from her bedroom. The door was cracked open just enough for a sliver of shadow to move across the floor. I pushed it wider and froze. Mrs. Marsh sat on the edge of her bed, hunched forward, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with every breath. She wasn't crying. She was laughing, a low, broken laugh that made my ribs tighten. "Mrs. Marsh," I managed. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were red, swollen, exhausted. But her smile was wrong. Too wide, too tense. "Did you get your letter?" she whispered. I did. Are you okay?" She nodded, still smiling that painful smile. Then she lifted a trembling hand and pointed behind me. I didn't want to turn. Every part of me screamed not to. But I did. There, on her dresser, was a framed photo of her husband. A younger, happier man, smiling beside her. I'd seen it before, in her living room, but now, something was different. Inside the frame, tucked behind the glass, was a slip of paper. A piece of letterhead. Fresh. Clean. I stepped closer. It was another handwritten note. Only 3 lines. He's standing in the doorway. He doesn't know he's become part of the letters. Neither did Edward. My breath hitched. I turned slowly back toward the bedroom doorway, where I was standing, the exact spot the letter mentioned. And Mrs. Marsh's smile widened as she whispered, "Don't you understand? You were never just reading the letters. You were helping him write new ones." Behind me, in the hall, something creaked. A soft, deliberate shift of weight. The same sound from my apartment. The same pace. The same steps. Right behind me. I didn't turn. I couldn't. I just stared into Mrs. Marsh's trembling, ecstatic smile as she whispered, "He's here for part 3. I didn't turn around. If I had, I don't think I'd be alive long enough to regret it. Whatever stood behind me in Mrs. Marsh's hallway breathed like it was learning how. Long, uneven pulls of air, followed by short, curious exhales, like something practicing a human rhythm by imitation, rather than instinct. Mrs. Marsh kept smiling at me from her bed, her fingers digging, into the blanket, knuckles white. "You remind him so much of Edward," she whispered. "That's why he chose you." Chosen. That word sunk into my chest with a weight that made it hard to breathe. "What does he want?" I whispered. Her smile trembled, but she didn't answer that. Instead, she said, "Read the latest letter." My throat tightened. "I don't." "You have to," she snapped, suddenly harsh. "He's waiting." The presence behind me shifted again. Not closer, just adjusting, like someone settling into a chair, except the floorboards beneath me flexed in a way that didn't match the movement. I reached into my pocket for the envelope I'd found earlier, the one that said I'd finally understand why he writes. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost tore the paper in half. When I unfolded it, something happened that made me swallow hard. The handwriting wasn't perfect anymore. It shook, jagged edges, unsteady lines, like whoever or whatever wrote this letter was trembling. I began reading. I tried to guide him gently. I tried to keep him awake long enough to understand. A cold sweat beaded on my back. Edward thought I was a spirit. He thought I was a memory. He thought I loved him. I swallowed hard. Another shift behind me. A tiny, eager creak. I kept reading. But I wasn't writing to warn him. I was writing to prepare him. Mrs. Marsh closed her eyes. She looked like she might faint, or laugh, or both. Sleep is the doorway. Dreams are the place we meet. Something brushed the back of my shirt. Not a grab, not a pull, a touch, like fingertips tracing an outline. He followed me too far. He stayed too long. I kept pieces of him. My stomach sank. Mrs. Marsh whispered, "I always knew." But her voice wasn't proud. It was hollow. "Now you're following the same path. You sleep like he did. You breathe like he did. You fear me the way he did." I felt myself trembling. "What are you?" I whispered at the paper. Mrs. Marsh's smile dropped. Her face drained of color as she whispered, Don't ask him that." But it was too late. The letter already had an answer waiting. I am what comes to those who think no one sees them. I watch the forgotten. I write the unseen. The next line was darker, heavier. Your life is made of quiet moments. You leave space in your days. Spaces I can step into. Behind me, a breath shuddered. Excited. Close. I read the final lines. Edward was the first. You are the last. And after tonight, I won't need to write anymore. I exhaled shakily. That's it? I whispered. Mrs. Marsh's eyes filled with tears. No, she croaked. Turn it over. My heart dropped like a stone. I flipped the page. Only 4 words were written on the back. You're already asleep. My vision tilted. My stomach lurched. The room warped at the edges, like heat rising from asphalt. No. I was awake in the bathtub. I was awake on the couch. I was awake just minutes ago. Except I couldn't remember leaving the bathroom. Couldn't remember walking down the hall. Couldn't remember opening the door to Mrs. Marsh's apartment. A cold realization crawled through me like a parasite. I never left the bathroom. This, everything here, was the dream he promised. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. A real dream, a place where he could move freely, touch things, write new letters. Behind me, the presence leaned close enough for its breath to fog the back of my neck. The voice wasn't loud. It wasn't growled or monstrous. It was soft, patient, familiar. A whisper, shaped by someone who had been practicing speech for a very long time. "Open your eyes," Mrs. Marsh screamed. "Don't!" My body reacted before my brain could stop it. My eyes opened. What I saw wasn't a man, wasn't a creature, wasn't anything that belonged in the waking world. Somewhere deep inside it were pieces that used to be human, hints of structure, symmetry, memory, but stretched, rewritten, rearranged into something meant for darkness, not daylight. A shape built of observation. A face made of everything it had ever watched. And it leaned in close, studying me with fascination, with hunger, with a strange tenderness. I didn't scream. Couldn't. It touched my cheek with careful fingers. Then it smiled a smile that did not belong to any single person. "Thank you," it whispered. "You read my letters perfectly." The dream collapsed in on itself like a punctured lung. Darkness swallowed everything. I woke up in my bed. Sunlight pouring through the blinds. My sheets perfectly smooth. No indentations. No sign anything had ever sat beside me. For a moment, I convinced myself it was all a nightmare. Until I rolled over and saw the envelope on my pillow. Pure white, uncreased, fresh, my name written in flawless handwriting. I opened it with numb fingers. Inside was one sentence: "Now you can write them for me." And below that, a second envelope, already addressed. Not to me, not to Mrs. Marsh, but to my neighbor across the hall. The return address. Just 2 words. "From you."